Welcome to today's video. My name is Brian Will, and I'm running for Senate District 21 to replace Brandon Beach. And today, I want to talk specifically about eliminating the Georgia state income tax. Now, I have opponents in this race who are claiming that they're going to do this, but haven't given us any plan or any substance on how. So today, I want to talk to you about exactly how we do it. And I want to start with this statement. We can eliminate the income tax. And I do have a plan, not just a talking point, and I'm going to give you the details as we get through this video. Now, in order to explain this, I need to give you some background information so that we understand where we are today. The state of Georgia has about $40 billion of income. That's important to remember. And we will spend about $38 billion this year, which means we have about $2 billion left over. That $2 billion is called our annual budget surplus. Remember that number. Of the $40 billion in income, around $16 billion comes from the income tax. That's 40% of our income. 40% comes from income taxes. And that is also important to remember. Now, when we talk about eliminating the income tax, the first thing we need to think about is if we lose $16 billion of revenue, we would not be able to operate as a state. We could not pay our bills. The bills just don't disappear. Now, my opponents have stated on stage in mailers and text that they're either going to just eliminate the state income tax immediately, or I've heard they're going to replace it with a use tax or a sales tax. And I have stated that neither of those will work, and here's why. And it's important that we understand why. First, if we increase the use tax or sales tax to eliminate the income tax, we are not eliminating anything. We're just calling it something else. And you are still paying it. In fact, changing the income tax to a sales tax would increase the sales tax from 7 to 14% here in Georgia. And do you know what happens when the sales tax doubles? The cost of everything you buy goes up. It means that the middle class, the seniors, and people on fixed income would end up paying more tax than the people who have, let's say, higher incomes, right? Wealthier people pay more income tax. Well, now that's going to be offset by the fact that the middle class is going to have to pay a higher sales tax. Changing the name of a tax does not help. In other words, if I just change the name of the income tax to the work tax, did I save you any money? No, but I can say I eliminated the income tax when in reality, I didn't actually do anything to help you. It's just tricky language to make you think I did something when I actually didn't do anything. The goal here is to save you money, leave more money in your pocket, not just do a gimmicky name change that doesn't save you any money, and in fact, will probably hurt you. Now, the second option for my opponents is let's just eliminate it. But remember, if we cut our revenues by 40% next year by eliminating it, that means we don't have that money to spend. And if we don't have it, we can't spend it. So without 40% of our revenue, we have to close 40% of our schools. We have to fire 40% of our teachers. We don't have the money to pay them. We have to stop working on 40% of our roads. We have to stop paying out 40% of our Medicare and Medicaid payments. We have to close 40% of our jails because we can't fund it. That means we let 40% of our prisoners go free because we can't pay to keep them. Everything has to get cut 40% if you cut 40% of our revenue. That doesn't make sense. That's not a plan. It sounds like a good political talking point on a flyer, but it's not realistic. That is politician talk, meant to fool you because a politician doesn't think you're smart enough to figure that out. Now, I assume everyone would rather hear an actual plan and not just a talking point trying to get your vote. And so here we go. Here's my plan. And it starts with DOGE, the Georgia Department of Government Efficiency. Now, everything I talk about moving forward is going to be about transparency and efficiency. Where's the money going? Who's getting it? How much are they getting? And what are they getting it for? And to start, I need to explain to you how the budget is made each year. This will allow you to see how we got where we are today. Now, 4 years ago, Georgia had about $26 billion in revenue, and we spent about $22 billion. This year we have 40 billion in revenue and we will spend 38 billion. Now think about that for a second. We were spending 22 billion 4 years ago, and now we're spending 38 billion. Where's the extra $16 billion going? Exactly who's getting it? How much are they getting? And what are they getting it for? And I'm not sure anybody knows. And if they do, it's probably only a few people. You see, in Georgia, we do what's called traditional baseline budgeting. Now, that's a fancy term. But what it means is whatever the budget was last year, we use that as a starting point for the new budget, and then we add on from there. We never go back to see what we previously spent to look and see if we still need to spend it. We just move forward and the budget grows. I'll give you two examples. I'm looking at our budget for next year, and in our budget, there is a line item for $126 million for agricultural experiment stations. Does anybody know what that is? Who got the money? How much did they get? What did they get it for? Another line item in the budget, I like this one, administration field services, $205 million. No explanation, just a line item. Now, these may be perfectly legitimate expenses, but how do we know? In fact, who knows? Here is what we do know. If they got it last year, they will probably get it next year, and they'll get a raise, and the budget goes up. And still, nobody will ask what it's for. Nobody goes back and looks at the contracts to see if we still need them. Nobody goes back and looked at the expenditures and asks if they're still relevant. You know, I dealt with this on city council. As an example, we had an annual contract with Microsoft that came up for renewal, and it was submitted to city council. And I noticed that we had 450 employees, but we were paying for over 600 Microsoft licenses. And I asked why. And I was told that that's just the way it's always been done. We pay for extras just in case. Well, I disagreed, and I had them go back and take the extras out, and we saved $100,000 a year in unused licenses. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about Doge. Transparency, looking at every expense. The opposite of traditional budgeting is what we call zero baseline budgeting. That means each year, every agency has to start at zero, not with what they spent last year. You have to start at zero and justify every contract and every expense, just like those Microsoft licenses. If we start from zero and we have to re-justify every expense and look at every cost, we can begin to find the problems and cut out the fraud, waste, and abuse in the state contracts. There are professional contractors and professional consultants who are absolute experts at gaming the state system to extract taxpayer dollars to make themselves very rich at yours and my expense. And the reason they can do it is because most people aren't looking at it. When I sat on city council, I was fanatical about individual costs. This is how we identified a $1.2 million bathroom project buried in a construction project, and we killed it. They had a second two-stall bathroom that was $750,000. We killed it. We had one that came across $90,000 for a bus stop, 3 bus stops, $90,000 a piece. We killed it. We had one that was $16,000 to paint a 6-foot tall letter A, just a letter A, $16,000 to paint it. We killed it. When the fire station contracts came back for remodeling, they came in at $5 million a piece. Killed it. Got it down to 2.9. Saved over $2 million per fire station. I could go on and on. The point is, I was looking. We found the wasteful spending and we killed it. And we saved our residents millions of dollars. With zero baseline budgeting and Doge, looking at expenses, we can do the same thing at the state level. As an example, the state of Mississippi has a Doge department. They have about an $8 billion budget. Ours is 40. And last year, their Doge department cut $400 million from their budget. They have, by the way, implemented a state income tax reduction plan that will lower their state income tax from its current level to 0% over the next 14 years. Part of that's because they haven't seen the type of revenue increases we have in Georgia, and they are taking a slow approach. Now, our budget's 5 times bigger than theirs, which means if they can save 400 million, we could safely assume we can save 2 billion immediately if we launch a Georgia Doge. Unlike Mississippi, our revenues have gone up 2 to 4 billion a year for several years now. But at the same time, our spending has also gone up $2 to $4 billion a year. And even with that, we still have a $2 billion surplus. Okay, that's a setup. You want to know the plan? Here it is. First, we set aside the $2 billion in surplus that we currently have dedicated to income tax reduction. That lowers the state income tax from its current level of about 5% to 4.3%. We go back to zero baseline budgeting. Remember, we justify every expense. And we implement an immediate 5% across the board spending cut. No more increases that are automatic. This saves us another $2 billion, which would, if applied to the state income tax, lower it to about 3.7. Then we allow Doge to go in and cut another 5%, saving us another $2 billion. In other words, take the Georgia Film Tax Credit, for example. We're giving Hollywood $1 billion a year and getting basically nothing in return. That needs to go immediately. We find another 5%, another $2 billion, and we can lower the state income tax from 5 down to 3 across the board. We can do that almost immediately. That could all be done in the next 2 years. From there, we structure a 5 to 6 year plan. If revenues continue to increase over the next 5 to 6 years, like they have in the last 5 years, we dedicate 75% of that increase to income tax reduction, not increased spending. And in 5 to 6 years, you have eliminated the state income tax completely. We did not put the state in jeopardy by trying to do an immediate cut. We did not just call the tax by a different name. We did not shift it to the middle class. We actually cut taxes. We actually save our citizens real money. And we do it with a real plan, not just a political talking point. This is how we effectively manage a state and a budget, and this is how we get stuff done. Go to my website at willforgeorgia.com for more information on my campaign. I'm Brian Will. Thanks for watching today's video on the elimination of the Georgia state income tax.